But this idea of the landscape and how it looks is a really interesting one to me now, because a lot of it, like things like the way we've traditionally started to manage the landscape, and some of those traditions are born in wisdom and of observation of nature, and this is the way stuff happens. And some of it's nostalgic tradition within family that happened just because it happened once, and we do it that way now, and it has no bearing on any kind of reasoning. And I find tradition a really interesting subject, because it's very ingrained in us, like, and it's tied up with nostalgia. But the reason tradition is a thing is because it embodies wisdom. And I think we presume that it always embodies wisdom, and it's been a recent realization that it doesn't. And people go, oh yeah, we need to listen to the old farmers and the way they did things and stuff like that. And yes, that's true, but we also need to test them and question them. It's not, this is the way we do things, just keep doing it.
So, like, when you talk about tradition, that would be more than likely generations passed down from to next
Yeah.
to next to next, and they just keep doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And to change that might be, it's a big deal.
Yeah,
You're
sometimes
breaking tradition.
Yeah, or even just emotionally.
Yeah.
You know, that why do you do it that way? It's just, it's the way we've always done it, without questioning it, without get into the root wisdom within that tradition, and then making decisions within your context based on that wisdom, rather than just mindlessly following the tradition.
Yeah, but I think when you break tradition, then there's that, you might be insulting the family.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah.
As opposed to maybe there's other ways that can be better.
Totally.
But more beneficial.
But I think the key thing there is finding the root reason behind the wisdom in it.
Yeah.
And if it's that case, then if you understand we do it that way because, then you can go, I'm going to do it this way because it does the same thing. That's the root wisdom within the tradition, rather than just doing it this way, and that doesn't fit into today's context.
So it's like, well, why?
Yeah.
Asking.
Yeah, it's just get into the root cause of things.
Yes.
Yeah, or the root reason.
Yes. You talked about questioning convention, but you had to break the tradition as well, because you had that with your farm.
Yeah, but it was actually quite interesting, because although the farming system that I took from that I inherited from my dad, and that was preserved by the workman, he was an innovator too. So my dad was, and so was my granddad. And like my granddad had, like, at the time it was like the early 1900s, so he was farming a very mixed farm. There was ploughing done with horses, and he was a big horseman. And then when my dad took over, it was about it was a progressive type of modern farming. We had first slatted shed in the area, and they're all stuff I've decommissioned. But it was about being efficient and being productive, and it was a very small dairy farm. We were only milking 30 cows or that kind of thing. So it was within, compared to kind of modern dairy today, it was within the ecological bounds of the farm. It wasn't crazy, but it was very, he was embracing technology and modern stuff. Like we'd electric fences and, the cool stuff that was just coming out. And he wasn't afraid to innovate and use those things. So, like, if you were to take that as the tradition rather than the system as the tradition, then I didn't break any tradition. I just followed on.
Yes.
Being innovative.
Yes.
And just being innovative in a different direction.
You talked about decommissioning the sheds. Yeah. Why? Do you not no need for?
It depends. It depends on your context and what you're doing. But a lot of the stuff was me just being grumpy about stuff. One of the primary ways to store kind of house cattle in the wintertime is to use a slatted shed. So there's slats on the floor, and the cattle all stay in pins, and they eat their feed outside those pins. And as they dung, and it falls down into a tank underneath through a slotted floor, right? And all this waste is called slurry, and it ferments in those tanks, so kind of denatures from the natural way. So this kind of fermented anaerobic material, and then that's spread out on the land. It's really high in nutrients, and it grows loads of grass. The downside of it is that the fermentation process makes it really acidic, and it changes the biology in that from being anaerobic, kind of the natural stuff that comes out of the cow, and it changes the profile of the biology of that. So when you're spreading out on land, it's actually can be quite detrimental to soil, because they're not. It's no longer symbiotic with soil structure and soil biology. So slurry can make soil very compacted. It can, if it's put on at too high rates, it can be detrimental to the biology that's in the soil, because it kind of smothers it, and it changes the pH of the soil to being more acidic. And I didn't like all those things, but it stinks. It's horrible for all the neighbours around. You're spreading slurry. I used to text all my neighbours and tell them, make sure you haven't any washing on the line, which was a nice thing to do, I think. But like now, we don't have any slurry on the farm currently, and hope never to have again. But anytime we're going for lighting a barbecue in summertime, it's the ideal time for spreading slurry. Also, you're just like, just put out the barbecue and we'll eat inside, because everywhere stinks, you know.
Yeah.
And so socially, it's horrible as well. But it's a really efficient way to house cattle in the wintertime. It's a really efficient, kind of relatively simple way to process all that waste, and it's called waste, even though like it's the core of fertility. It should be the core of fertility on a farm. And so it's kind of, you're reducing this the nutrient cycle of the grass being consumed by the animals and dunged out, and you're reducing that in quality or in functionality within a natural cycle. So I just don't like it at all. That's why we decommissioned the slurry shed, or the slatted shed. And we had then in organic systems, they promote using a dry bedded shed. So you're bedding out your shed with straw or some other dry material like wood chip, or and then the animals are on that, and then that, when they dung and urine on that, it breaks down and you can make it into kind of compost, which is a good process in many ways. It's different to the natural cycle. You're slightly breaking the cycle, of course, but you're creating a material that's way higher in value to the soil and the general thing of the farm. But the process involved in doing that, for instance, in Sligo, if I'm buying straw, it's been trucked all the way up the country. To me, it's really expensive, because there's very little arable or grain production in Sligo. So all the straw, which is the waste material from grain, or the stalks of a grain crop, is trucked up here, and it's used as the bedding, and that's fine. It's great, and chemically and biologically it works really well. But the work involved and the logistics of moving that and then having to process that and turn that over and turn it into compost, it's all very energy and work intensive. And that kind of annoyed me, because I'm essentially a lazy kind of farmer.